So today's video is on stamp duty. So we're sticking with the whole property theme at the moment. So stamp duty is one of those expenses where when you're purchasing a property, you sort of can't get out of. So each state is in charge of their own stamp duty. So whenever you purchase a property within any state, the state government will determine how much stamp duty is going to be payable on the acquisition of that property. What does the government do for this stamp duty? Basically, it's just changing the name from the vendor to the purchaser and giving you a nice big stamp saying thank you very much and charging you this fee for the cost of the transaction. So what I thought was interesting to see is we all know that stamp duty is a significant cost to property acquisition, but in some states of the country, it equates to about half a year's income just going towards stamp duty. So stamp duty is not the cost of the property. Stamp duty goes on top of the cost of the property. So I thought 6 months, a 6 month fee was pretty excessive and exorbitant. So this is also causing negative impacts within the housing market as well, because it means people are less likely to move from one property to another because the cost of buying another property is so high. So if you want to move to, downsizing, going from a big 5 bedroom house to a 2 bedroom house, you will have to pay stamp duty on the acquisition of the 2 bedroom house, and the person that's buying the 5 bedroom house from you will be paying stamp duty again. So you can see here how it sort of delays the flow and delays the process of buying and selling. Obviously, state governments are staying quiet about this because they also benefit from something called bracket creep. So if anyone was watching the last few weeks of our videos, we're talking about bracket creep when it comes to tax rates. The same thing happens for stamp duty. And what I mean by that is if the local state government was charging 2% for stamp duty on a property that was 500,000, that would say cost you about 9,000. Now the price of that property has gone to 1.5 million. At 2%, that's now gone to 30,000. So that's what we call bracket creep. It's exactly the same transaction that's happening at exactly the same stamp duty rates, but because the price of the asset has increased so much, it's causing the fee to be paid each time this transaction happens to significantly increase, causing a lot of revenue for the government.
Making money, eh?
It's a lot of money. And when you see this graph here, this one here really blows it out of the water. This is what sort of got me when I was reading this article. You can see that Sydney and Melbourne, it takes 6 months of saving your income to purchase a medium price home. So it takes 6 months just to save the stamp duty. So that doesn't go to the cost of the house. That's just the stamp duty. So you can see Brisbane, Adelaide, and I don't know why Perth is not there, but you can see everything is sort of on the way up because the prices of properties are going up. So this is why the cost of the stamp duty is going in line with the increase of of the property price. What do you think of that, Dave? That's nuts.
That is nuts. And you can just see how really expensive it is for someone to actually get into the property market and actually invest in property. It's property is a very interesting asset class to invest in. And like you said, with these costs like stamp duty, it really limits people's ability to quickly go in and out. And with this asset class, it's relatively illiquid because it's very hard for you to convert your asset and your equity and stuff like that into cash readily available. And yeah, it's something that you really need to be cognizant of when you start investing in property, because you have these really high costs. You have this inability to convert your money to cash quite easily. And yeah, I definitely think as well, like when it comes to like in comparison to investing in shares, people have more of a tendency to, be able to trade and go in and out of the market, convert their assets to cash quite quickly. So it can really depend on the investor and what their appetite is in terms of what they want to do with their portfolio. But yeah, looking at stamp duty, it's a very important consideration for people who want to get into the property market because there's those high barriers to entry. There are those high costs. So yeah, it's really interesting to see it.
I suppose on the flip side of that too, the the entry and exit points, it does slow down the process. So it does also decrease speculation in the market as well. So
Mhm.
if people were jumping in and out of properties for a very small fee, say a nominal fee like $1,000, you have a lot of buying and selling happening. So
Mhm.
that would then cause unnecessary speculation, and so something else could go wrong, I suppose. So there's always two
Actually,
sides
just
to a coin.
I was like reading this book recently on investing on the stock market, and it actually recommended that you start with your first investment as a property. And they said why? Because people will actually spend a lot more time investing and researching that actual property, understanding the market, why they're buying it. Because a lot of times in the stock market, people will just throw their money into it without thinking too much or without having to research it as much. So I guess there's always those pros and cons to everything, but you can also see the difference in the type of investor and the difference in the type of people who will invest in these different asset classes, because there is a lot more thought process when you're dealing with a large transaction like a property purchase and you're dealing with those high costs like stamp duty. You have to actually consider it. It's not a light decision for people. So yeah, that's a good point about speculation.
So this graph as well goes back to tax revenue that's generated by the state government, but this is governments across the whole. So obviously you can see here Australia's up there in terms of um, the value of the stamp duty compared to total tax revenue. So because this is so high, I don't see governments really looking at this, state governments looking at this, because it is a big source of revenue for them. And as prices go up, and because properties are really popular, the value of the transactions are going to get bigger and bigger, and so is their pie of tax. So I don't think they are going to be changing it. They really should be looking at this, but I don't think they will, or at the moment especially. So if you're an investor as well, when it comes to stamp duty, the actual stamp duty is not tax deductible upfront. It actually forms part of your cost base. So what that means is when you do sell the property at the end, you do get the benefit, or I shouldn't say a benefit, but you do realize the cost of acquisition, and that comes off your total tax bill as well. Uh, so so just going at that as well. So you cannot depreciate it amortize it upfront. Similarly, or not similar to say lender's mortgage insurance. Lender's mortgage insurance is a cost you pay upfront that you can amortize. Stamp duty is not. You cannot amortize it. It just forms part of your cost base. So you do recognize it at the end, but you don't get nothing for it upfront. So also, when you're purchasing a property, this fee or this stamp duty, it could be a very expensive part of your acquisition. So sometimes lenders do allow it to be rolled into your loan, but best to check with your lender as well, because some of them also don't allow it as well. That's it. If you have any questions on this topic, feel free to hit me up, or feel free to hit us up. Catch ya.